If you want your agents to accomplish loads of valuable work on your behalf, they must be able to validate their work. Why is validation so important? Validation increases the trust we have in our agents, and trust saves your most valuable engineering resource, time. The Claude Code team has recently shipped a ton of features, but one in particular stands above the rest. You can now run hooks inside of your skills, subagents, and custom slash commands. This is a big release most engineers have missed because it means you can build specialized self-validating agents. Inside of this code base, we're going to kick off a new Claude Code instance, and we're going to run /review finances February, and then I'm going to look for a specific February CSV file. Imagine you're doing your monthly finances. This is a system I'm building up to automate some financial processing. I'm going to copy the relative path of this and then paste this here. This is going to kick off an end-to-end pipeline of agents to review finances, do a bunch of formatting, generate a bunch of graphs, and offer insights into this month's finances. The important thing here isn't the actual tool itself. Whenever there's a new valuable feature, I like to build against it and truly understand its value proposition. So that's what we're going to do here. This entire multi-agent pipeline is going to run specialized self-validation every single step of the way. You can see our primary agent getting to work there. We're going to let this run in the background and we're going to circle back to this. What I want to show you here is how to build specialized self-validating agents step by step. Let's start with the most foundational and the most important, the prompt. In Claude Code, prompts come in the form of custom slash commands. We're going to go ahead and create some new agentics. So I'm going to open up the commands directory, of course, hit new, and we're going to build a CSV edit markdown file. All right. So this is going to be a new prompt that helps us edit CSV files. All right. So we're specializing this command to do one thing extraordinarily well, and therefore we're specializing an agent to do just that. I have a code snippet, AGP. If you've been following the channel, you know what this does. This is an agentic prompt template. And I've made some new modifications to it. So you can see here at the top, we have a huge payload of front matter. And the front matter is what's going to allow us to build our specialized self-validation via hooks. And you can see here, we have support for pre-tool use, post-tool use, and stop. This is what's supported in prompt, subagent, and skill hooks. Whenever I'm creating a new prompt by hand, which I still do, by the way, I have meta agentics to help me quickly spin up new prompts, subagents, and other skills, but I do like to write prompts by hand. There are some areas where you just want to scale and go crazy with your agents. When you're talking about building that system that builds the system, when you're talking about working on your agents and really understanding agentic patterns and tools, you want to slow down and do it by hand. So let's go ahead and write this prompt. I like to go just top to bottom here for our CSV edit. This is going to be a CSV editing tool. So we're going to make modifications and report on CSV files. All right. So that's how we're specializing this. And we will intake a CSV file and we'll also intake a modification. So this is the user request. We'll just call this user request. For our tools here, this is just CSV file writing. So we do want to specialize this agent. We want the ability to search. We want read, write, edit. And I think that's it. So let's go ahead and get rid of the rest of these. Context fork. We don't want this to run in a separate agent. We want this to run in the current agent we have. We want this to be model invocable. Keep this as false. And now we have the juicy part, the hook. So what do we want to self-validate here? Whenever we're operating on CSV files, we want our agent to be able to validate that that CSV is in the correct format. And so that means we want the post-tool use hook, because this will allow us to, after a edit, write, and I'm going to go ahead and add read here as well. So after any one of these commands run, we're going to run a specific hook. We're going to run a specific script. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of pre-tool use and stop here. So this will just echo post hook. Let's go ahead and update this to be an actual script we have inside of the code base. The way I'm organizing my code base is now in the age of of agents with these powerful self-validation techniques looks like this. So in your classic .claude, commands, agents, skills, blah, blah, blah. Inside of hooks, I like to store a validators directory. And you can see here, I have a whole bunch of validators. We're going to use one in particular here, CSV single validator. And so I want my agent to kick this off. So I'll type UV run. We need the path to this specific project directory. So we're going to use this Claude variable here. And then it's going to be .claude. And we're basically just passing to this, right? So I can go ahead and get the quick reference to this, paste that. And now we have exactly what we need. All right. This is it. You can see here, every one of my validators outputs its own log file. So we're going to dig into this in just a second. What we have here now is an agent that after every post tool use call, it's going to run this script. And I have this once variable on here. I actually want it to just keep self-validating. So I'm going to remove this. And then we have our actual prompt. I've written thousands of prompts by now. And one of the most important things you can do inside of your code snippets, inside of your meta prompts and your meta skills, your meta agentics, is create reusable formats so that you don't have to think about it. And so that your agents don't have to think about your prompt format. You can see here, anytime I run this code snippet, I'm going to get the exact same structure. And again, if you've been with the channel, you understand the structure very well. I'm just going to go ahead and start working on this. All I need here is these two sections. So the purpose, this is going to, of course, make modifications or report, and we actually want or report on CSV files. And then we have a 3-step workflow here, read the CSV file. And this is going to be our first arg. And then second is going to be make the modification or report. And then lastly, we're going to report the results. All right. And I have cursor tab turned off here just so we can do this manually on our own. We don't want to get lazy with all these great tools. Of course, you want to be using agents for most of this stuff. But when you're learning something new, when you're setting up a new pattern, I think it's really good to just go in by hand, and on your agentic layer, you want to be doing things by hand, move a little slower. Don't move at the agentic speed that you probably normally are. You want to take your time with this stuff because, if you learn how to deploy the core 4 context model prompt tools properly, it will make you a very, very high impact engineer. So here we go. We have a CSV edit prompt that is going to self-validate. We're using pandas here. And so we're just doing pd.read, and that's basically it, right? So you can imagine whatever validation structure you want to run here, you run it, and you can see here, if something goes wrong, we're going to return a set of issues. The key here is to direct your agent once something goes wrong. So we have this line here. When we're building out our response to our agent after it's called this validation command, we're saying the following: resolve this CSV error and then we're specifying the file path. And then we're just going to unload all the errors for our agent to resolve. So let's go ahead and test this in a new terminal window here, Claude Code instance running Opus. And then we have a brand new /CSV edit. There's our argument hints thanks to our hint parameter right here. Now we can just pass in a CSV file to edit. So we're going to use one of our mock CSV files here in the code base, mock input data, raw savings in February. And I'll just copy the reference to that, paste, and now we're going to make a request. I'll just do something simple, read and report on the file structure. And so this is going to be simple, right? We're not actually doing a CSV edit here. Maybe I could have named this something a little different, but you get the idea, right? This agent can read, edit, and write. Let's see what it's doing here. It found the file location, and now it's just going to report on the data structure. As you know, the magic here is that after our agent runs, so, here's our great report, nothing too fancy, nothing too interesting here, right? But our agent has run this self-validation. The big idea here is this is a self-validation specific to this use case. I can't stress that enough, how important it is that this self-validation is hyper focused on this purpose of this prompt. The prompt extends to the subagent, extends to the skill, whatever, format, whatever packaging you're putting your prompts in, that doesn't really matter. Remember, it all boils down to the core 4 context model prompt tools. In the end, every abstraction is that. This adds a powerful deterministic layer that is, again, specialized. Let me show you the result. This is one of the reasons why it's so important to have observability and to really log everything. You can see here, we have output for our CSV single validator. And you can see that everything passed fine. We were able to perfectly parse this CSV file. It is, in fact, a valid CSV file. Now let's break it and let's see what our agent does when it has a specialized self-validation tool it can run. I'm just going to break the CSV. I'm going to remove this last quote here. Let's see what happens now, right? So I'm going to clear out this agent so it has no information. I can just hit up here a couple times, right? So CSV edit, same file, report on the data structure. Now watch what happens here. This is where the real magic is. It read, And right away, because it ran that red hook, it broke. And then our validator said, hey, resolve this error that we found. And the agent immediately fixed it. Now it's going to rerun. It's actually doing that report properly, and it mentions that fixed issue. So what happened there? You know exactly what happened, right? We've been working up to this step by step. Our post tool use hook ran, and it inserted determinism into our agent's workflow. All right. So not only did it do whatever we asked it to do here, and we're running a super simple example. I'm sure some engineers are thinking, wow, that was so simple. Why are you just having a single 20-line prompt for CSV validation for updating CSV? You don't need that, blah, 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 blah. The models are good enough now. Stop. Full stop, please. You want to be building focused agents that do one thing extraordinarily well. Why is that? That is because a focus agent with one purpose outperforms an unfocused agent with many purposes, right? With many tasks, with many end states. We can now push this even further with specialized hooks that we can embed in our prompts, subagents, and skills. Why is this so important? This is critically important because we can push specialization further. My CSV agent can now validate its work in a deterministic way. This is ultra powerful. I'm shocked that more engineers aren't talking about this. I think it really shows the kind of weird gap right now. There's a lot of vibe coding happening. Even engineers are starting to just vibe code and turn their brain off. Don't get lazy. Stay sharp. Keep learning. And one of the key ways to do that is, guys, you have to read the documentation. Actually sit down and read the documentation. I'm seeing way too many engineers and vibe coders just, you come to the top of the page, copy, you open up your agentic coding tool, you paste it in, and you say, build POC of this. Okay. When you do this, you learn absolutely nothing. The whole journey of learning is the journey. In the end, you gain that knowledge for every other time. But when you do stuff like this, right, and you don't actually read the documentation, you don't know what your agent is doing, that is vibe coding. That is, leaning too heavy on the vibes, if you ask me, right? Because what's the problem with this? The big key difference between real engineering and, vibe coding, or whatever you want to call it, vibe engineering, I don't really care what term is used. The big difference is that engineers know what their agents are doing. Okay. If you want to know what they're doing, you have to know and you have to read the documentation of the thing you're building against. There's just no way around this. So anyway, small side rant. I'm seeing way too many engineers outsource learning. That is how you begin the self-deprecation process. You stop learning. Highly recommend you just, take the time, read through the documentation, understand what you can do so you can teach your agents to do it. Okay. So this is very powerful. Our agent resolved that error on its own. And now anytime I run this, a CSV edit, the agent is going to validate it when it finishes. Okay. And that's it. You can, if you want, you can stop the video now. That's it. Self-validation is now specializable. Before, we were stuck writing global hooks in our settings.json file like this. You would write out the hook here, and that was great, very important, very powerful. You'll still want to do stuff like that. For instance, we built out a Claude Code damage control skill that protects your code base and just very quickly sets up, powerful hooks to block commands. But what we get here is something really powerful, something really extraordinary. It is specialized self-validation. You've heard me say it 100 times. That's really what's happening here, right? This is the one idea I wanted to share with you today. Now, this is just the prompt, right? Let's go ahead and see what this looks like inside of a subagent and a skill. It looks very similar, but there are a couple, caveats and a couple things to mention along the way. If we open up the release notes here, so I'll just search for hooks. It's insane that this valuable feature was just kind of buried into this list of bullet points, but the Claude Code team has been absolutely cooking. Anyway, so what am I trying to say here? There's a weird thing that's happening right now where the Claude Code team is kind of combining skills and custom slash commands into one. I'm not really a huge fan of this. Let me just search for skill, I guess, right? Yeah, merge slash command and skills. Very interesting. I think the team maybe realized that they truly did just build out another way to run slash commands, which again kind of validates our foundational idea that we talk about on the channel all the time with the core 4. Everything just turns into a prompt that runs into your agent. Context model prompt tools. You've heard me say it a million times. I'm going to say it a million more times because a lot of information out there around agents is very hype filled and very kind of void of raw information. Oftentimes in engineering, when you're learning a new skill, when you're building up a portfolio of expertise, there's really like 4 foundational facts that if you understand them and master them, you will go extraordinarily far and you will become very, very capable. The core 4 is one of them. And you can see that here, merge / commands and skills. They're the same thing. It's a prompt. So anyway, just wanted to mention that. Let's see what self-validating inside of subagents and skills looks like. I'm going to hop over to agents. You can see I have a few agents here. We want a CSV edit agent. All right, so we're going to build the exact same thing, but as an agent. So what do agents give us? Agents give us 2 key things over a prompt. They give us parallelization, right? So we can parallelize our work. We can deploy multiple agents at one time. And they also give us context isolation and effectively delegate our context window. I have a snippet for this, AG. This can be an agentic agent. And you can see here we have that same kind of format, all of our options listed out right away, and then we can dial into exactly what we want, right? So I like to just give myself all the options when I'm working, and then I can dial it down, or of course I can have an agent dial it down as well. CSV edit agent. And I'm just gonna do some copying here from our previous prompt here, use only when directly requested. And then I'll say CSV edit agent, just to make that super clear. We don't need all of these tools. In fact, we can just mirror our tools from our prompt. And we don't need disallowed. There's our model, permission mode. We can just get rid of that. Skills, we're not going to be using a skill. And then we have our hooks, same deal. We're going to delete pre, delete stop. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy over this. And what else? I deleted something there. Oh, the color. Sure, cyan. And I'm just going to copy the exact same prompt too. So, you'll notice this looks very, very similar, right? The structure is very similar, a little bit different because remember, prompts can intake arguments, whereas subagents just kind of take the prompt that's passed into them. And so we might tweak something like this, pull from prompt, and then pull from prompt, or like determine from prompt is probably better language here. Fantastic. So we can do the same thing. Let's kill this agent, and our agentic workflow probably completed. Nice. We're at an 8-minute agentic workflow that automatically agentically handled my finances for this month. And of course, I'm using mock data. It's not actually my finances. We got a great breakdown here. We'll circle back to this in just a moment. I want to show you the subagent using specialized self-validation. And what we'll do is we'll deploy 1 agent per file. Again, that's what subagents give you. They give you parallelization so that you can scale your agents across multiple versions. Use 1 CSV edit agent per file in mock input data, and append 3 new rows, 2 expenses, file. We properly increment the balance. Okay. Because in these CSV files, you can see here we will have a balance, and let me actually turn on my UI for this. So you can see here we have a balance and this moves upward. So when this moves up, we add 650 here because this is a deposit. That's why I added that line, right? Make sure that the balances are correct as we move upward. We're going to kick off 4 CSV agents in parallel to edit each one of these files. There you go. You can see we are starting to stack these up. And again, the big idea here is that after every one of these agents run, they're going to validate the file they just operated in. Not only do we have individual prompts that can self-validate, we have subagents that we can scale that self-validate. Okay. Really think about this. This is specialized self-validation. You can scale specific commands, right? Check out my other commands here. Build.md. I have a linter. I have a formatter running here using the brand new Astral UV TY and rough tooling. This is going to run after my build agent runs every single time. Okay, so we have 2 hooks running here on stop. So when the agent finishes, it's going to look over all the code here only when the build agent runs, right? So we're not running commands when we don't need them. We run them in specific use cases. This is just 2 simple examples of this, right? You can really, really scale this all the way down to the prompt, but then you can push it into your own agents and your own skills. And so this is where this gets really powerful. Imagine you're doing a migration. Imagine you're updating some fields in the database. Imagine you're doing any type of work that you yourself would come in and validate. You can now teach your agents to do this. This is a big idea we talk about all the time. This is a closed loop prompt now. Okay. And we don't even have to prompt engineer it anymore. You still can if you wanted to, right? You could say something like this, validate your work with XYZ, right? So you would say UV run, blah, 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 CSV. You might need to build an additional, in agent validation command because the inputs here are a little bit different, but you get the idea, right? You can still do this. There's nothing wrong with this, but the massive benefit of throwing this inside the hook is that you know this will always run. Okay. And so every time one of these tools are called inside of this agent, it is going to validate its work. Okay. This is a guarantee. And this is why, the Ralph Wiggum technique, all these kind of prompts plus code, agents plus code, these techniques are starting to gain popularity. It's for this reason. You're adding trust into the system. You're having your agents validate their own work. That saves you time. You're not doing the validation. You're just making sure that you set the system up right. And this is a big theme we're going to see moving forward in the age of agents. The engineers that are building the agentic system in tactical agentic coding, we call this the new ring around your code base. You don't work on your application anymore. You work on the agents that run your application. Okay. And the big idea here is that you can now have agents that you quite literally trust more by just adding the right hooks, the right validation. Ralph Wiggum, all these techniques on the channel, we've discussed this. Agents plus code beats agents. Okay. That's it. It's that simple. That's what self-validation is. That's what the closed loop prompt is. This is what it looks like to really teach your agents how to build and engineer like you would, right? It's by doing things like this. Every engineer, every good engineer at least, validates their work. And soon, it's going to be the exact same thing with your agents. Every good specialized agent, great at doing one thing well, will validate that one thing. Okay. I'm very against this kind of generalist, do-it-all, super omni agent where you just nuke the context window over and over. I'm highly convicted that if you want to build an agent that outperforms over and over and over, you build a focused, specialized agent, even down to something like this, right? This is a real agent that I would build out. CSV edit agent. We just edit CSV files. That's it. It's not that you can't do this with a, bigger agent doing 10, 20 different things. Opus is very powerful. It can do that. That's not the point. The point is that this will perform better over tens, hundreds, thousands, and millions of runs. Okay. If you want to scale, you want your agents self-validating. And not just any validation, you want your agents specializing their self-validation, right? So that's the value here. We don't need to walk through building the skill. You know what that looks like. You do CSV, edit, skill, and then you build out skill.md. And then I have a code snippet for this, basically more or less the same thing. So I'm not going to build this out. You get the idea here. I'm going to go ahead and just delete this, and I'll go ahead and commit the other two. And you'll have access to this code base if you want to poke around what's happening here and understand how you can, build out some more self-validation. But you can see all those 4 agents ran in parallel. They validated their work, and we can prove it. Again, you want to have proof that these things ran. Hooks and CSV single validator. We can scroll to the bottom here, and you can see every one of those files was validated at basically the same time within a second, right? That's because we use parallelism. We have edits that we know worked. Okay, let me just say that again. We have edits from our agent that we know worked because we gave them the tools to validate their own work. You can see here, we had a bunch of stuff run and it outputted something like this, right? So all we did was pass in a CSV and it gave us this. Here was our previous version, January 2026, and here's our new version here. Sorry for the light glare changes there, but just a simple high-level view of finances. This is a real use case of generative UI, by the way. Some of this is static that I had the agent generate over and over. Some of it is dynamic. So some of these tables that it created, I had no idea it was going to create. You can see here we have a bunch of insights about our spending for the month, right? All the way down to the table level. We can sort this. We can see our burn. We can see our income, balance, blah, blah, blah. I know some people don't trust models and model providers to do stuff like this. I think it's totally fine. This is what this tool did, right? We had a full agentic pipeline build this out, a team of agents. And once again, I can tell you I was very, very confident that this was going to work end to end. Okay. And why is that? You already know what I'm going to say. If we open up this prompt, review finances, I had a single prompt and we can go and collapse this. You can see I'm once again using our great agentic workflow pattern. Nothing new. It's the same thing over and over and over. You'll notice that about this channel. We are very consistent and we're always focused on using the best tools for the job. All right. Hyper focus on the signal in the industry, not hype, not noise, not anything else. And you can see here, right? You can see something very powerful. I have an HTML validator running here on the top level. Frankly, on the review finances, this is the kind of super workflow. So you can see here, this workflow workflow is actually kicking off multiple agents underneath it. All right, we have the agent chain here. So we are chaining together multiple agents, multiple steps. And you can see here we're running a whole slew of different specialized agents. Guess what they're going to do? Yes, they're all going to validate their work. Let's hop into our categorize CSV agent. Check that out. Let's hop into our generative UI agent. There's that HTML validator. Let's hop into our merge accounts. There's the CSV validator, on and on and on. And you can see here we have this normalized CSV agent actually running two validators, and these are running on the stop command. So when it stops, I'm running some kind of global validators that run on all the files in this code base, because why not? Just test all the files. Kind of general rule of thumb, if you want to test a bunch of files at the end of your specialized hooks, you can use the stop hook. And if you want to test just one file like we did, you probably want to go for that post tool use, so that inside of your script, you get access to the path that was read, edited, or written to. Feel free to check out this code base. I built this as a kind of working prototype to quickly run finance review, to calculate, expenses and income for the month. Make sure you have this in your own private code base if you decide to fork this, pull ideas from it, whatever. The big idea here is you can build out specialized self-validators inside of your prompts, your subagents, and your skills now. And if you're really pushing this stuff, you can do something really, really cool. If we close this, we run Claude -- help, and we do a grep on, let's just do a grep on hook. That's not very helpful. Let's drop the grep and we do just a help. You'll see something very cool. Settings, you can, inside of your primary agent, pass in an entire settings file as JSON, and that includes hooks. All right, I'm just going to leave you with that idea. You can take validating agents to another level with this. Comment down below. Let me know how you're using hooks. I'm super curious if you have turned on specialized hooks. If this is the first time you're seeing this, no problem. It's really not getting enough attention. Engineers, you got to be careful. You got to make sure you're still learning and still internalizing knowledge. Don't delegate learning to your agent. All right. It doesn't do you or them any good outside of that one shot that they run in. All right. So make sure you're still reading the docs. Make sure you're still following, the big releases coming out of these leading tools, technologies. Obviously, Claude Code is the leader in agentic coding, and it allows us, therefore, to tap into this new role of engineering we're calling agentic engineering. Opus 4.5 has been changing the game for a while, and it's very clearly a step change forward into the future of engineering. But be very careful with this stuff. Do not overuse these models to the point where you're not learning anymore. That's kind of the meta idea I just want to, leave you with here today. All the potential we can have with agents is incredible, but if you delegate the learning process to your agents, you will be stuck. You will not continue to grow. And the worst thing any engineer can do is start the self-deprecation process by not learning anything new. All right, definitely check out specialized self-validation in the form of hooks inside of your custom/commands, aka prompts, your subagents, and your skills. You know where to find me every single Monday. Stay focused and keep building.